The Nakajima Kika, Orange Blossom, was Japan's first jet aircraft. It was developed late in World War II and the first prototype had only flown once before the end of the conflict. It was also called Kokoku Nigo Haiki. Design and development. After the Japanese military attaché in Germany witnessed trials of the Messerschmitt Me 262 in 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy issued a request to Nakajima to develop a similar aircraft to be used as a fast attack bomber. Among the specifications for the design were the requirements that it should be able to be built largely by unskilled labor, and that the wings should be foldable. This latter feature was to enable the aircraft to be hidden in caves and tunnels around Japan as the Navy began to prepare for the defense of the home islands. Nakajima designers Kazuo Ono and Kenichi Matsumura laid out an aircraft that bore a strong but superficial resemblance to the Me 262. The Kika was designed in preliminary form to use the Su-11, a rudimentary motorjet-style jet engine that was essentially a ducted fan with an afterburner. Subsequent designs were planned around the Ni-10, TR-10, centrifugal flow turbojet, and the Ni-12, which added a 4-stage axial compressor to the front of the Ni-10. Tests of this power plant soon revealed that it would not produce anywhere near the power required to propel the aircraft, and the project was temporarily stalled. It was then decided to produce a new axial-flow turbojet based on the German BMW 003. Development of the engine was troubled, based on little more than photographs and a single cutaway drawing of the BMW 003, a suitable unit, the Ishikawa Jima Ni-20, was finally built in 1945. By mid-1945, the Kika project was making progress once again, and at this stage, due to the deteriorating war situation, it is possible that the Navy considered employing the Kika as a kamikaze weapon, although this prospect was questionable due to the high cost and complexity associated with manufacturing contemporary turbojet engines. Other more economical projects designed specifically for kamikaze attacks, such as the simpler Nakajima Toka, designed to absorb Japanese stock of obsolete engines, the pulsejet-powered Kawanishi Baika, and the better-known Yokosuka Oka, were either underway or already in mass production. Compared to the Me 262, the Kika airframe was noticeably smaller and more conventional in design, with straight wings, lacking the slight sweepback of the Me 262, and tail surfaces. The triangular fuselage cross-section characteristic of the German design was less pronounced, due to smaller fuel tanks. The main landing gear of the Kika was taken from the A6M0 and the nosewheel from the tail of a Yokosuka P-1Y bomber. Designation. The Kika is often identified as the Nakajima J9N1, or occasionally J9Y, which according to a researcher at the National Air and Space Museum is incorrect. The official name given to the aircraft was Kika. Like other Japanese aircraft intended for use in suicide missions, it received only a name. Imperial Japanese naval aircraft were designated similar to U.S. naval aircraft of the time frame. A first letter, denoting the role/type of aircraft, separated by a number that denotes where in the series of aircraft of the same role the aircraft resides, followed by a second letter denoting the design and manufacturing firm, and finally, a second number denoting the aircraft subtype. The first 3 characters remain constant through all the subvariants an aircraft might be built to. Operational history. The first prototype commenced ground tests at the Nakajima factory on June 30, 1945. The following month it was dismantled and delivered to Kisarazu Naval Airfield where it was reassembled and prepared for flight testing. The first flight took place on August 7, 1945, the day after Hiroshima was bombed by atomic bomb, with Lieutenant Commander Susumu Takauka at the controls. The aircraft performed well during a 20-minute test flight, with the only concern being the length of the takeoff run. For the second test flight, 4 days later, 4 days prior to Japan's declaration of surrender, rocket-assisted takeoff, RATO, units were fitted to the aircraft. The pilot had been uneasy about the angle at which the rocket tubes had been set, but with no time to correct them they decided to simply reduce the thrust of the rockets from 800 kilograms to only 400 kilograms. 4 seconds into takeoff the RATO was actuated, immediately jolting the aircraft back onto its tail, leaving the pilot with no effective tail control. After the 9-second burning time of the RATO ran out, the nose came down and the nosewheel contacted the runway, resulting in a sudden deceleration. However, both engines were still functioning normally. At this point the pilot opted to abort the takeoff, but fighting to break the aircraft and perform a ground loop only put him in danger of running it into other installations. Eventually, the aircraft ran over a drainage ditch which caught the tricycle landing gear. The aircraft continued to skid forward and stopped short of the water's edge. 7. Before it could be repaired, Japan had surrendered and the war was over. At this point, the second prototype was close to completion, and approximately 23 more airframes were under construction. One of these was a two-seat trainer. Other follow-on versions proposed had included a reconnaissance aircraft, and a fighter armed with two 30mm Type 5 cannons with 50 rounds per gun. Citation needed, these were expected to be powered by more advanced developments of the Ne-20, known as Ne-20 Kai 5.59 kN, 570 kgf, or Ne 138.826 kN, 900 kgf, or Ne 238.679 kN, 885 kgf, or Ne 313.043 kN, 1330 kgf, which were planned to have approximately 15% to 140% better thrust than the Ne-20. Post-war. After the war, airframes 3, 4, and 5, and possibly other partial airframes, were brought to the U.S. for study. Today, two examples survive in the National Air and Space Museum. The first is a Kika that was taken to the Patuxent River Naval Air Base, Maryland for analysis. This aircraft is very incomplete and it is believed to have been patched together from a variety of semi-completed airframes. It is seen in the black and white photo in bare metal with two Ne-20 engines mounted under the wings. It is currently still in storage at the Paul E. Garber Preservation, Restoration and Storage Facility in Silver Hill, Maryland. The second Kika is on display at the Nazem Udvar Hazy Center in the Mary Baker Angan Restoration Hangar. Correspondence in 2001 with Japanese propulsion specialist Kazuhiko Ishizawa theorized that Nakajima constructed the museum's Kika airframe for load testing, not for flight tests. This may explain why the engine nacelles on the museum's Kika airframe are too small to enclose the Ne-20 engines. Two Ne-20 jet engines had been taken to the U.S. and sent for analysis to the Chrysler Corporation in 1946. This was only revealed in 2005 by W.I. Chapman, who was in charge of the project at the time. A working engine was assembled with the parts of the two Ne-20s, and tested for 11 hours and 46 minutes. A report was issued on April 7, 1947, titled Japanese Ne-20 Turbojet Engine. Construction and Performance. The document is now on display at the Tokyo National Science Museum. Introduction. On April 19, 1944, Erprobungskommando 262 was formed at Lechfeld just south of Augsburg, as a test unit, Jäger Erprobungskommando Thierfelder, commanded by Hauptmann Werner Thierfelder 342, to introduce the Me-262 into service and train a corps of pilots to fly it. On July 26, 1944, Lieutenant Alfred Schreiber with the 262A1AW near 130.017 damaged a Mosquito reconnaissance aircraft of No. 540 Squadron RAF-PR Squadron, which was allegedly lost in a crash upon landing at an airbase in Italy. 43. Other sources state the aircraft was damaged during evasive maneuvers and escaped. Major Walter Nautny was assigned as commander after the death of Thierfelder in July 1944, and the unit redesignated Commando Nautny. Essentially a trials and development unit, it mounted the world's first jet fighter operations. Trials continued slowly, with initial operational missions against the Allies in August 1944, and the unit made claims for 19 Allied aircraft in exchange for 6 Me-262s lost. Despite orders to stay grounded, Nautny chose to fly a mission against an enemy bomber formation flying some 9,100 meters, 30,000 feet, above, on November 8, 1944. He claimed two P-51DS destroyed before suffering engine failure at high altitude. 46. Then, while diving and trying to restart his engines, he was attacked by other Mustangs, forced to bail out, and died. The commando was then withdrawn for further flight training and a revision of combat tactics to optimize the Me-262's strengths. On November 26, 1944, a Me-262A2A Sturmvogel of 3 Gruppe/KG-51 Edelweiss based at Rheinhausen Air Base near Osnabrück was the first confirmed ground-to-air kill of a jet combat aircraft. The Me-262 was shot down by a Bofors gun of B.11 detachment of 2875 Squadron RAF Regiment at the RAF Forward Airfield of Helmond, near Eindhoven. Others were lost to ground fire on 17 and 18 December when the same airfield was attacked at intervals by a total of 18 Me-262s and the guns of 2873 and 2875 Squadron's RAF Regiment damaged several, causing at least 2 to crash within a few miles of the airfield. In February 1945, a B.6 gun detachment of 2809 Squadron RAF Regiment shot down another Me-262 over the airfield of Vogel. The final appearance of 262s over Vogel was in 1945 when yet another fell to 2809's guns. By January 1945, Jagdgeschwader 7 (JG-7) had been formed as a pure jet fighter wing, partly based at Parchim 48, although it was several weeks before it was operational. In the meantime, a bomber unit, Agrippa, Kampfschwader 54, KGJ-54 redesignated as such on October 1, 1944-49, through being re-equipped with, and trained to use the Me-262A2A fighter bomber for use in a ground attack role. However, the unit lost 12 jets in action in 2 weeks for minimal returns. Citation needed: Jagdverband 44, JV-44, was another Me-262 fighter unit, of Squadron, Staffel, size given the low numbers of available personnel, formed in February 1945 by Lieutenant General Adolf Galland, who had recently been dismissed as Inspector of Fighters. Galland was able to draw into the unit many of the most experienced and decorated Luftwaffe fighter pilots from other units grounded by lack of fuel. During March, Me-262 fighter units were able, for the first time, to mount large-scale attacks on Allied bomber formations. On March 18, 1945, 37 Me-262s of JG-7 intercepted a force of 1,221 bombers and 632 escorting fighters. They shot down 12 bombers and 1 fighter for the loss of 3 Me-262s. Although a 4-to-1 ratio was exactly what the Luftwaffe would have needed to make an impact on the war, the absolute scale of their success was minor, as it represented only 1% of the attacking force. In the last days of the war, Me-262s from JG-7 and other units were committed in ground assault missions, in an attempt to support German troops fighting Red Army forces. Just south of Berlin, halfway between Spremberg and the German capital, the Wehrmacht's 9th Army, with elements from the 12th Army and 4th Panzer Army, was assaulting the Red Army's 1st Ukrainian front. To support this attack, on 24 April, JG-7 dispatched 31 Me-262s on a strafing mission in the Cottbus-Bautzen area. Luftwaffe pilots claimed 6 lorries and 7 Soviet aircraft, but 3 German jets were lost. On the evening of 27 April, 36 Me-262s from JG-7, 3 KGJ-6 and KJJ-54 were sent against Soviet forces that were attacking German troops in the forests northeast of Baruth. They succeeded in strafing 65 Soviet lorries, after which the Me-262s intercepted low-flying Il-2 Sturmvogels searching for German tanks. The jet pilots claimed 6 Sturmvogels for the loss of 3 Messerschmitts. During operations between 28 April and 1 May, Soviet fighters and ground fire downed at least 10 more Me-262s from JG-7. However, JG-7 managed to keep its jets operational until the end of the war. And on 8 May, at around 4 p.m. about Fritz Stahel of 2./JG-7, while flying a Me-262 on the Erzgebirge, attacked a formation of Soviet aircraft. He claimed a Yakovlev Yak-9, but the plane shot down was probably a P-39 Airacobra. Soviet records show that they lost 2 Airacobras, one of them probably downed by Stahel, who would thus have scored the last Luftwaffe air victory of the war. 52. Several two-seat trainer variants of the Me-262, the Me-262B1A, had been adapted through the Armrust-Bositz 1 factory refit package as night fighters, complete with onboard FUG 218 Neptune high VHF band radar, using Hirschway, stag's antlers, antennae with a set of dipole elements shorter than the Liechtenstein SN2 had used, as the B1A/U1 version. Serving with 10. Staffel Nachjagdgeschwader 11, near Berlin, these few aircraft, alongside several single-seat examples, accounted for most of the 13 Mosquitoes lost over Berlin in the first 3 months of 1945. Intercepts were generally or entirely made using wild sow methods, rather than AI radar-controlled interception. As the two-seat trainer was largely unavailable, many pilots made their first jet flight in a single-seater without an instructor. Despite its deficiencies, the Me-262 clearly marked the beginning of the end of piston-engined aircraft as effective fighting machines. Once airborne, it could accelerate to speeds over 850 km per hour, 530 miles per hour, about 150 km per hour, 93 miles per hour, faster than any Allied fighter operational in the European theater of operations. The Me-262's top ace was probably Hauptmann Franz Schall with 17 kills, including 6 4-engine bombers and 10 P-51 Mustang fighters, although fighter ace Oberleutnant Kurt Welter claimed 25 Mosquitoes and 2 4-engine bombers shot down by night and 2 further Mosquitoes by day. Most of Welter's claimed night kills were achieved by eye, even though Welter had tested a prototype Me-262 fitted with FUG-218 Neptune radar. Another candidate for top ace on the aircraft was Oberstleutnant Heinrich Baer, who is credited with 16 enemy aircraft 56, while flying Me-262s out of his total of 240 aircraft shot down.